I remember one too.
Well said.
WTOC and WSAD.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Fleming, and I work for the Bryan County Sheriff's Office. I am the acting PIO for the department. First and foremost, we want to thank everybody so much for coming to this community survey results meeting. This is really important to us to open the lines of communication between our department and the community. So thank you so much for joining us, whether you're in person or you're online. First and foremost, the people I want to introduce up here in the panel so you know who will be speaking. It's going to be on the far left. It's going to be Miss Christina Thompson, and then it's going to be Miss Amanda Graham, and then it's going to be Mr. Logan Summers, and they work with the GSU Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice. They're the ones who helped us put this together, and they'll go more into detail on how that got developed, what the results were, and how it was all analyzed. And of course, Sheriff Mark Crow is with us. So how the agenda is going to go, first and foremost, we're going to have the GSU Criminology Department go over the results and how everything came to be. And then we will go into the sheriff's going over the results and how that affects our department and what changes we plan on making based off the recommendations that we have received and also from what the community feedback is. And then we will open it up for Q&A either on the floor, and I'm also monitoring for comments online to take those down as well so we can make sure no questions go unanswered at this time. So I will hand this over, and thank you so much for attending.
Hello. All right, thank you guys all for being here today. We're really excited on our end to be here. My name is Dr. Logan Summers. Again, I teach in the Criminal Justice Department at Georgia Southern University. I'm at the Armstrong campus. We're really excited to be here with you guys. This is a really unique opportunity, we think, for largely two reasons. One, you know, it's pretty rare in these times for a department to open themselves up like this and to be engaged in this way, and so we're really excited to be a part of that. And on the other end, it's rare, at least on the research side, for us to be able to actually engage and talk with the individuals in which, you know, fill out surveys that we create. And so we're really intrigued to hear from you guys and your thoughts on what we put together as well. So just to quickly go over it, because I know some of you may have started reading the report and fell asleep reading it. That often happens on our writing. So basically this whole project started May of last year, where the Sheriff's Department reached out to our department at Georgia Southern University and asked, Sheriff Crow had just recently been elected, I believe, correct? And they were really interested in building community partnerships and working with local organizations, Georgia Southern being one of them. So during our initial meeting with them back in May, we talked about some of the initiatives that Sheriff Crow was hoping to put together, and they kind of revolved around four different areas. One being building community relations, finding a way to increase transparency coming from the department, building interagency collaborations, as well as, you know, making some technological advancements. So after a lot of back and forth in that initial meeting, we kind of decided the best place to start would be community relations. This would really be baseline where to go, and obviously it has implications for those other goals as well. So after some back and forth, we decided, well, we should really gain the view and the aspect of all of you all who live in Bryan County, and that's really how this came about. We went back and forth on, you know, we developed a survey, but we also developed it in combination with the Sheriff's Office leadership as far as, you know, we went back and forth on additions and made changes, what have you. And so that ultimately resulted in the survey that I think many of you probably took or that you're seeing the results of today. So again, a lot of the questions on that survey, which my colleagues here will be going into, were related to y'all's perceptions about the department's effectiveness, your perceptions about how you were treated by officers within the department, as well as some of those open-ended items that asked you guys to, you know, in your own words, express, you know, your concerns with the department and things that the department's doing well and your suggestions for ways in which the department can improve. And so that's all of what you're going to be seeing today. So the papers or the surveys were sent out online through both Facebook and Twitter, correct?
Facebook, and we also met with multimedia outlets.
That's right. Oh, that's right. That's right. And we also had paper editions of the survey that were available to be sent out, although nobody ended up returning any of those. The survey ran from July 22nd to October 8th. And so in total, we received 117 responses from members of the community. And you can kind of see the breakdown of the characteristics of the individuals who replied, right? So around 65% were female. It's about a little over 90% white, 84% married, 5.1% were involved active duty military, 17% veterans, and 53% either were actively in law enforcement or had a close friend or family member who was. So just interpreting these, right, some of these characteristics, and this is sometimes the issue with dealing with a smaller sample, some of these are skewed compared to the larger population as a whole. So obviously, the proportions for Bryan County as a whole in terms of female and percent white there are a little off of what they actually are in reality. So just keep that in mind as we go through the results here. And with that, obviously feel free to ask questions at the end, but I'll hand it off to Dr. Amanda Graham. Thank you all.
My apologies. I am Dr. Amanda Graham. As mentioned, I'm with the Georgia Southern University's Criminology Department, and I'm actually on the Statesboro campus, so beautiful drive on the way down here tonight. Actually, it was very beautiful. So during this survey, one of the things we wanted to understand is the relationships that exist between interactions between the law enforcement officers as well as the community. And one of the things that we wanted to understand was, in particular, how are people perceiving their treatment? One of the things we understand from research is that people want to be treated fairly. They want to be treated with dignity and respect. They want to be treated with neutrality. And when they're treated with those manners, people tend to cooperate with the law because they view the law as more legitimate. They have an obligation or a felt obligation to obey the law simply because they were treated with dignity and respect. Therefore, they're going to cooperate with law enforcement more often. And so we specifically asked about how satisfied individuals were with Bryan County Sheriff's Office. And as you can see in these bar charts here, at the top end of our scale, people reported from very poor to very good. And as you can see, there is a spectrum here in which we asked how satisfied are people with dealing with problems in the community. For the most part, doing pretty good. Admittedly, though, that, as I mentioned, there is this distribution that we see. We see that there are some people who don't think that Bryan Sheriff's County is doing very good at some of these tasks, like preventing crime and solving crime. So there could be room for improvement in that regard. We also asked about the effectiveness of Bryan County as a sheriff's office in terms of addressing many different issues that are going on in the community. Particularly, we asked about how effective Bryan County Sheriff's officers were in dealing with public disturbances, assistance, responding quickly to calls for service, assisting victims of crime, and quite frankly, just overall impressions of the sheriff's office. And again, what we find is this overall mostly positive response about the effectiveness of Bryan County Sheriff's officers completing what is intended to be their goal, is being effective in responding to the community. We then decided to ask a bit about citizen satisfaction. How satisfied are you all with Bryan County Sheriff's Office? That's another good indicator then of, well, how do you feel about this department? How are these relationships looking? And one of the things we do in research is we try to ask these questions in both directions because, for example, I can ask you, how happy do you feel about something? But I also want to make sure that I ask you, how unhappy do you feel about something? To make sure that we're able to capture the entire spectrum of the feelings that are going on. So we asked, in terms of perceptions of trust and communication, how not trustworthy or untrustworthy is Bryan County Sheriff's Office? We asked how open and transparent. That was a positively worded question. We asked if they failed to listen to the input of the community, being you all. We asked if the community members did not feel comfortable contacting Bryan County Sheriff's Office. And by and large, what we find is the responses were in the direction that we would hope that they would be in, and that people were fairly trustworthy, felt that Bryan County Sheriff's Office was fairly trustworthy, felt that they were leaning towards a bit more open and transparent, and for the most part, most people in this survey did not necessarily feel uncomfortable contacting Bryan County Sheriff's Office. However, again, notice that we have a full distribution of responses here, so this means that while we do have a trend of people having these positive ideas and relationships with Bryan County Sheriff's Office, we do have experiences across the entirety of the spectrum in terms of people saying, no, I don't feel comfortable contacting them. No, I don't think they're open and transparent. So one of those things to keep in mind is that we do have responses across the entirety of the spectrum. As I was talking about, in the theory, or in the literature, when we start understanding police-community relationships, when we start understanding how to police in an effective manner, it's not just all strategies and tactics. It really does boil down to the quality of treatment and the quality of decision-making of those sheriff's deputies. And so, in theory, if people are treating, or if deputies are treating community members with quality treatment, they're treating people with respect and dignity, giving them reasons to trust them, providing community members with a voice when they contact community members. In theory, community members should have this felt obligation to obey the law because they believe the sheriff's office and the deputies are legitimate enforcers of the law. They are legitimately carrying out a duty that the community supports, which should lead to compliance and cooperation with not only deputies, but the laws in and of themselves. So how then does Bryan County Sheriff's deputies and the office as a whole stand up in this model? Do community members feel like they're being treated fairly, with dignity, with respect, that officers are acting in an unbiased manner? Do community members feel like they can trust the department? And as a result, do they feel like they can cooperate? Well, this is what we found. We asked a series of questions, 10 questions about how fairly people felt Bryan County Sheriff's officers were treating community members. And by and large, what we see is, if we're looking across the bottom of these charts, the response options range from 1 to 4, with 1 being strongly disagree to 4 being strongly agree. And for each of these questions, what we see is, for the most part, we find respondents say that yes, sheriff's deputies are honest. They respect your basic rights. They treat people with dignity. They treat people with respect. They try to be fair, for example. However, do make sure that you note that there are some people who said, no, I don't agree that they try to be honest. I don't agree that they treat people with respect. So we've got to make sure that we're cognizant that there are two sides of this spectrum. But we do see the vast majority of people agreeing with these statements. Now, as I mentioned, sometimes we like to turn these questions kind of upside down on their head to try to understand, what's the opposite of this? What else along this spectrum are people feeling? And so we asked them about their feelings of procedural injustice, and we asked whether Bryan County Sheriff's Office were prejudiced against, for example, minority persons, if they were rude, if they didn't listen to community members before they made decisions in their contacts, if they trusted some people more than others, or if they treated some people better than others, and if they abused their powers. Again, for the most part, we do see that, again, this is a negatively worded question, we see the response we would hope to see, which is most people disagreed with these statements. They said that no, for the most part, our Bryan County Sheriff's officers are not prejudiced against minority persons. They're not rude. But again, we're seeing that full spectrum of responses. When it comes to the question of, do community members feel that Bryan County Sheriff's Office and Bryan County Sheriff's deputies are legitimate, that they're actually enforcing the law and they're acting in a way that reflects community norms and values, we see that, yeah, they perceive what we term legitimacy. How legitimate do you believe these sheriff officers to be? There's a lot of support for viewing these officers as legitimate enforcers of the law. So, for example, we have, by and large, the vast majority of respondents said that yes, Bryan County Sheriff's officers are legitimate authorities. that if an officer tells you to do something, you'll go ahead and do it, even if you feel like you've been mistreated. For example, you should support how deputies should act. The vast majority of individuals said, yeah, I agree, or I strongly agree that we should support how deputies act. Or, for instance, actions are consistent with your own personal values. So, again, we're finding some positive news here, that some evidence to suggest that Bryan County Sheriff's officers are being viewed as legitimate enforcers of the law in this community. Which leads us to the very end of that model, trying to understand, as a result of how community members are being treated, and as a result of having these officers being viewed as legitimate, will then community members cooperate with Bryan County Sheriff's Office? Will they cooperate with investigations? Will they cooperate with requests from these officers? And what we find is, again, strong support to suggest that, yeah, there's a lot of cooperation or a willingness to cooperate with Bryan County Sheriff's deputies when it comes to reporting crimes, minor crimes, serious crimes, if you've been the victim of crime, suspicious activities, as well as just simply asking for information. So we do find support then that community members are willing to cooperate with this office. Which leads us then to the third part of our survey, which was really looking at the open-ended response questions. So for that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Christina Thompson.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for having us here tonight. So my role in all of this, I'm also a professor at Georgia Southern on the Statesboro campus. My training is a little bit different, whereas my colleagues are trained in a lot more policing-oriented, understanding those theories, understanding organization. I'm more of a broader focus on community, particularly rural communities, and I'm kind of cross-trained in both qualitative and quantitative methods. So qualitative is a little bit better for gaining some of the context that we need to both put those numerical values into something that we can make actionable change for. And so I'm going to talk about some of the things that emerged based on the analyses that I conducted. So as many may know, we asked a few open-ended questions that basically sort of encapsulate all the things that citizen members are probably thinking about when they think about law enforcement in their community. So what do they think are the biggest issues in terms of public safety, how they think those things should be addressed, how they think the sheriff's office needs or can improve its relationship with the community, and where they think the strengths are right now, where they see areas for improvement. And so you can see that some of these will probably overlap and dovetail. And what I ended up finding was it made more sense to sort of think about each response from each individual citizen more holistically and see what was coming up more often thematically. There's a sort of a coding tool for doing this to make sure that I don't miss themes that keep reemerging. And what's also really nice about this approach is that we can kind of see if there are different issues that need to be focused on in different parts of the community. And again, it'll help us sort of contextualize why we might be seeing some citizens less happy with certain aspects versus others. And so I kind of group these around three major characteristics, and I want to begin by saying I think one thing that about information sharing, I think this is a really positive first step in terms of linking what the community members are saying to you and being open to sometimes difficult conversations with really challenging potential for how do we resolve some of these things. So three barriers that seem to come up pretty consistently is that there are things about the county from a structural level that are really difficult. So we know that our last meeting was in Pembroke, this meeting is in Richmond Hill. They're very far apart, right? And as you all know, with the military base in between, it can really cause some disconnect between the Sheriff's Department and the Sheriff's Department and those respective communities. And so that was something that citizens definitely recognized. They also recognize that there are resource constraints that are somewhat related to this geography issue. And so how do you make sure you have your personnel in the right places, that you have the equipment to do the job that you need to do? And then the third one is this pattern differential treatment, which did appear across a few different citizen responses. Sort of working through what that might mean is really tricky, right? Because we know that we change who is in charge based on elections, and so you could be seeing some of these things happening from before, from a previous administration, but you also want to make sure that those sort of things don't move forward, right? So we definitely had some citizens concerned that there was differential treatment depending on last names or who has the money in the county. And so what was really great was to see all these strategies, which I'm going to hold off on talking too specifically about now because they do make their way into the recommendations, and I want the citizens to know that these things that they raise are really central to the recommendations that we ended up constructing, and they're pretty consistent with what we know from some of the research. So we'll talk about how engagement can happen from the sheriff's side and also from the community side. Oops, wrong computer. One thing that also became very clear is that traffic is an issue in the county, and there's lots of sources for this, including that it's a growing and vibrant county, and Bryan County's not alone in trying to figure out how to address these growing pains. And so there were a lot of questions about things like speeding and reckless driving, and even just the way the roads are, the infrastructure of the roads are, which can exacerbate some of those problems. So we saw a lot of the same areas sort of emerge as potential consistent problems that the Sheriff's Department might be able to focus resources towards. I think one thing that was really revealing and interesting concerns how traffic is sort of guided by the weight station, for example, and how that can impact public safety more generally. So I definitely will leave those in there. Those are direct quotes from citizens, and I think they are really useful for sort of identifying, this traffic concern is something that both, obviously the Sheriff's Department is thinking about and the citizens as well. One thing to keep in mind, though, before I get to substance use, is that all citizens and the Sheriff's Department sort of have different ideas about how we can make this better. And so that's going to be really important that we sort of talk through that we have different perspectives on what could be a positive change for traffic. We view it from a public safety, right? We want people to be safe on the roads. And then it's also the mix of how do we want the Sheriff's Department to be spending their time, and are there other areas that the community would rather have them prioritize? So that balance is tricky, and again, not unique to Bryan County at all. And then the final sort of broad area that emerged in both North County and South County was that drug use is a pressing problem in the community. And one thing that I think we discussed was oftentimes drug use was used pretty, like that was the terminology. And we would suspect that different resolutions and recommendations are going to have to be made based on what kinds of drug use issues we see. So we'll talk a little bit about what it means for youth access versus what it means for rehabilitation services, because those might require different responses from the community and different responses from the Sheriff's Department. And so if there are patterns based on offense type, one solution may be enhanced enforcement, particularly around drugs getting into the county, but we also need to be thinking about how we can be more holistic in responding to drug and substance use and abuse, and how we're going to make that work for youth in a way that can preserve their future for them, right? Because we know that these things sort of can be pretty circular and lead to some additional challenges down the road for individuals that have a mark of a conviction of any kind. And with that, I will hand it back to you all.
All right, so this led us then to the following recommendations. And these were independently developed by our team to help provide the Sheriff's Office a kind of few different areas in which we saw that improvement might be made to help better the community and the practices by Bryan County Sheriff's Office. And recommendation 1 really ties into what happened with this survey. You know, we gathered some initial information from community members, but clearly more than 117 people live in this county, right? So we believe that collecting more input from community members is going to be vital to helping understand the problems that are existing in this county. Hearing from community members is absolutely what needs to happen in order to understand the problems and potentially come up with solutions to fix them. After all, you live in these neighborhoods, you live in these areas, so you may have a creative solution for addressing these problems that hasn't necessarily been considered. Additionally, we are taking steps to potentially, as well as surveying the community, surveying the sheriff's deputy officers as well, to understand how they perceive things. How do these deputies feel about their employment in Bryan County Sheriff's officers, how they engage with community members? Because understanding both sides of this relationship is important, and right now we only have one side of this relationship. So that's definitely going to be part of this first recommendation. Our second recommendation was to look at the calls for service data. Basically, every time you pick up the phone, call 911, you're dispatched over through to Bryan County Sheriff's Office, an officer is sent to your location, right? Well, we want to examine these calls for service data to understand response times. How is it this county is structured is definitely going to play a role in response times. And so we want to understand, are there differential experiences when it comes to this response? Is there a better way to situate deputies in a way that they can respond quicker and more beneficially to the community? For recommendation 3, we wanted to partner with victim resources, or we recommended a partnering with victim resources within the community. We know there are people doing really good work when it comes to helping address crime in this community, as well as helping victims of crime in this community. And so partnering with them would be absolutely beneficial, to share that information, to link victims up with these services. This leads us to recommendation 4 then. We recommended identifying some of these community events, as well as creating other opportunities then to help receive community input. While surveys are nice, we also want to hear more informal commentary from the community about their experiences, how they feel about what's going on, and potential solutions to problems that are identified. Recommendation 5 was to review the current traffic enforcement strategies. As Dr. Thompson mentioned, you know, many respondents recognized that there was a need for something to be done about traffic. Sheriff deputies also agree something needs to be done about traffic. We haven't surveyed them yet, but based on my experience with law enforcement, they would agree. The question is, what should be done? So we recommend reassessing those strategies, looking for opportunities to more efficiently engage in traffic operations. Recommendation 6 then is to conduct a needs assessment. As Dr. Thompson also mentioned, in these survey responses, many times respondents simply put drugs. Drugs are a problem. Not exactly very specific in helping us in terms of what kinds of drugs. Are we talking about vaping? Are we talking about marijuana? Are we talking about fentanyl? These are all very, very vastly different issues which have different underlying causes and therefore different solutions that might be made to address them. Which leads us to recommendation 7, which is tied to actually the President's 21st Century Task Force on Policing, which is to embrace the principles of procedural justice in all aspects of law enforcement. So not just how deputies are treating community members, but how deputies are treating each other, how their supervisors are treating them, how the sheriffs is treating them. If we use procedural justice, this idea of treating people with fairness, dignity, respect, being trustworthy in our motives when we engage with people, things are going to go in a positive direction, whether we're talking within the organization or when we're talking between the organization and the community members. And I want to make sure I hit all of our recommendations. Therefore, when we sat down with the Bryan County Sheriff's Office, golly, what was that, a month or two ago? Early December. COVID timeline, man. Time is crazy. We sat down with the Bryan County Sheriff's Office and we presented these recommendations. And we discussed a lot of what we found in here. And so with that, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Deputy Fleming then, who kind of took it upon herself to respond to these recommendations about what is the Bryan County Sheriff's Office doing with these recommendations and what might they plan to do.
Thank you all so much for kind of going over that. So we'll touch on our recommendations, and then the sheriff can add his input as well. So for recommendation, we are going to continue to do community surveys, not only with our deputies within the community. I have had the chance to get out into the community and talk to a lot of people, and it has been made apparent to me that not everybody knew about this survey, so therefore input, as the doctors have said, didn't give a very clear and precise response in what we were looking for. And we needed to know that, so I did go back to the sheriff and said, we didn't get everybody. And we kind of knew we didn't get everybody when we got the response of the numbers. So we are going to be looking at doing another one again. And we will make sure that we are going to be partnering with community leaders so that they can get into their communities and say, hey, this is what's going on. We're still continue to partner with our media, and we will continue with our social media as well, so that way we continue to get it out as quickly as possible to let as many people know as they can. We understand not everybody's on social media, everybody's on different platforms, and we're actually creating a response to that, and I'll let the sheriff talk about the app and how that's going to play an effect for everybody. As long as you own a smartphone, you're good to go. So that's kind of recommendation one. Also, to do more meetings. We understand people can't be here in person, so this is actually our first time being able to stream and reach people, and I'm seeing, you know, we have lots of viewers at home. So that's important to us. We reach as many people as possible. Recommendation number 2 about service and response times. Again, I'll pass that to the sheriff here momentarily. We have discussed different software programs that are more up to date, more quickly. We can get more information out to y'all faster than what we currently have. 3, we've been actually growing. Bryan County has been in victim resources. In fact, I've gotten out into the community. I'm still working out. I'm sorry, I'm one person. And what we are doing is we are going to hold a community event in the near future that anybody who services Bryan County, we're going to do an event that the sheriff wants to make it fun for the kids, but allows for resources to come out and speak one-on-one with families who need those services. Because too often we call numbers and they get passed down the line and somebody can't answer your question. Oh, talk to the next person. Well, I can't help you. Then where are these communities left? They don't have answers. And that's not right. We should be able to have somebody face-to-face being able to answer your questions about resources that they can use and a point of contact. We don't need the runaround about resources. We need them now. So we understand that's coming up and that's in the works about that community event. The sheriff is big on not just doing an event on the north and south like we have. He also wants to get into the communities themselves, doing different housing places that we can get involved with the youth and speak with the parents. So it kind of goes hand in hand with that. Recommendation 5. It's a double-edged sword for us, really, when it comes to traffic. We recognize that we have a lack of deputies at this time. However, the sheriff has really put the pedal down about the hiring process and getting more people going. Our traffic team has been on point with their numbers. We do put those up quite often to show how much interaction they're having with the community. I'm not just talking citations or anything of that nature, but how much are they engaging within traffic enforcement so that they're being able to be seen. Are you seeing our deputies on the road where they need to be? So that's kind of where we're at, because I know a lot of people associate traffic with citations, and that's not necessarily the relationship that we're trying to go for overall. Recommendation 6, we understand that Bryan County has a drug problem, and that all counties around us, then when we have been having meetings with them, they too are having drug issues as well. So we're doing a multi-agency assist and making plans for the near future on how we're going to combat that as well. Also, recommendation 7, we want to continue with the training coordinator, which is Sergeant Hicks, about additional training for our deputies, so we continue to be professional, be the deputies that I know the community wants, and I know that they want to be, and we want to make sure that we're up to date on any changes that could potentially come. So I will hand it over to the sheriff to kind of touch on the recommendations as far as where we're at with our SSI.
Okay. So I'll go to number one. I'll start at number one there. So we started probably mid-year last year trying to develop an app that would come out. We hoped it would come out right before Christmas. Of course, it got pushed back, and it was supposed to come out right before Valentine's Day, and here we are now a few days later. So it's coming, and it's going to be a very good piece of the puzzle for us and for you guys to be able to find information, to be able to contact us for any reason whatsoever. I mean, if it's just to drop us a line and say, hey, you're doing great, or to give us a tip on a person or somebody that's doing something in the community they shouldn't be. And with that, I'm going to say the online part of it with the tip through the app on the tip part is completely anonymous. It's not tied to anything at all. You can get on there and say what you need to say, what you want to say. Nobody can identify you in any way, shape, or form. We don't ask for any information. So when that comes out, what we will do from that point is we will stop, not necessarily stop completely, but we will start using our app to push the information out instead of using Facebook. Because I know a lot of you are familiar with Facebook, and what happens when we send out some information on Facebook, it hits your feed. If you don't see it right away, in a few minutes, somebody else has sent something, and it's all the way down here at the bottom, and you have to scroll through it. So a good example is on the north end, there was somebody that had escaped from somewhere, and they were looking for him. We put it out, but the people in that area didn't get it right away. And they were down, when they finally found it, there were comments on it. Hey, why didn't you guys put this out earlier? Why didn't we know about this? Well, we did. But it fell down in your feed so far that you didn't see it. With this app, you can go online to the App Store, you can download it, and as soon as we push it out, it'll alert you. And it'll say, this is what's going on in Bryan County Sheriff's Office. And it's going to be linked to so many, I wish we had something to put on the screen. It's going to be linked to so many things in the county where you can go look up sex offenders, you can pay your traffic citation, you can get reports online, you can search the jail, you can visit through the app into the jail, you can put money on people's books in the jail, you can, there's so many things that it will do that it's going to be a great thing for us. The other part of that is we're looking at a different software program to run our entire operation. What I mean by that is our sheriff's office, our jail, our dispatch, to bring all those things together under one umbrella instead of piecing it together piece by piece. So dispatch right now has a software program that runs it. We have a software program that runs the sheriff's office, and a piece of that runs the jail. And so what'll happen, hopefully between now and the end of the year, we'll have at least solidified the funding for that and started putting those things in place. But what'll happen is the deputies right now, the patrol vehicles that are out on the road, there's probably, I think we have 45 right now, and at least half of them have a computer in their car, which is a mobile data terminal. They can, right now, they can stop you on the road for a traffic citation and put your information in, pull up your history, so to speak, off your driver's license and print a ticket out and then transfer that ticket to the state clerk of court's office up there in Pembroke. What they cannot do is they cannot connect back to our dispatch center. So what this software program will do is it will link all of those things together. And let's just say that the deputy is over on this side, over here on 144. They write a ticket. The ticket turns into a DUI. They wind up having to carry that person to jail. And so everything that's involved in that is a ticket, is now a report that they have to do, and an arrest and booking report for the jail, and a warrant maybe for whatever it might be. What they have to do now is separate. This program does this one does this, so it's redundancy. They have to type the information in this one, type it in that one, type it in that one, type it in that one. All those things come together, it goes to the clerk's office. With this program, they type your information in one time, and all that information will be pulled over into your ticket. When you get the ticket, your information is there. When the report comes in, the information is there. When they get ready to do the warrant, the information is there. And before they get to the jail, the information is sitting at the jail. So they don't have to sit at the jail for another 25, 30, 40 minutes, whatever it is, at the jail doing that paperwork and then come back over here. So that's going to keep them out in the communities longer. They'll be able to be in different places instead of having to go back to the office every time they need to do a report. They'll be able to be in different places and be able to use their computer in their car to do all of those things. So it's going to keep them out there in the communities longer. Let's see. Examine calls or service day. What is, I forgot what the next thing was I was going to talk about.
We were going to talk about our traffic, the difference
So
between
traffic enforcement, I get calls quite regularly about traffic enforcement, about speeding and a lot of vehicles being on the roadway in certain areas, congestion. And the sheriff's office, there are certain things that I can do as the sheriff, or we can do as the sheriff's office, but what we can't do is we can't put those infrastructures in place. That takes the county commission to be able to say, or GDOT, the state of Georgia, to be able to say this particular stretch of highway needs to be set at this speed limit, or this needs to happen and there needs to be a no passing zone here. Or now we can, if we see problems start to occur, we can say to them, hey, there's issues that are going on in this particular area. You might look at a red light here because there's a lot of accidents happening here. They do take the information that we give them, however, through our accident reporting system, and they identify those problems as well. And some of that that you saw on that screen as far as the traffic issues that people brought up, that is being addressed right now by GDOT. On the north end, they're putting in 4 roundabouts on the north end, and some of those areas they talked about to eliminate some of that congestion and to slow down some of those people. I think 144, they're talking about redoing one of the roundabouts down here on 144 to make it bigger and wider, so that I think some of the big trucks that were trying to get down that way were tearing it all up. So, too many cars pulling on the 144. I think some of that has been eliminated by opening up the new bypass or overpass over here at the 82. Some of that traffic now can go over that way instead of coming down 144 onto 17 and such. The increased traffic need for lights. They are putting a red light at I-16 and 280 at the Loves, just at the Loves truck stop where Daniel Defense is. There's going to be a red light there. And we have Wilma Evers at 280. They're going to put a roundabout there. The semi-trucks, this has been going on for a long period of time. Unfortunately, this is going to get worse because they just sold an extreme amount of property over there. And Georgia Ports Authority, they're coming over there to build warehouses. So that truck traffic is going to pick up. And I've been told that the reason they go this way is not necessarily to bypass the scales. I don't believe it either. But that they go that way to hit Highway 80 because it's a better direct route to the port instead of having to go all the way up to Dean Forest and then take a right and come back. They get off on 280 and hit Highway 80 and go that way. I can understand that if it's a fuel-related issue nowadays with the fuel prices as high as they are, but this has been going on forever and ever and ever. And it could be some of a number of things, fuel, the mileage being a little different, and bypassing the scale house, of course. So, the Belfast, Keller, and 17 area, I understand they're going to do some work there, and the county has, I think they have contracted with Hutton. I can't think of
do a study.
Okay, to do the study from Richmond Hill city limits all the way to the county line on Highway 17, the traffic study. But they have proposed doing, I think they called it what do they call it, a what now?
R-turn through a.
R-turn or some kind of turn that they're gonna go in there and fix that so that, that it's easier to get in and out of those areas. I don't know how much easier it's gonna be, but those situations like that, we don't have much input on that. That goes, like I said, through GDOT and through the commissioners to be able to do some of that. Speed bumps, I've had calls about speed bumps in neighborhoods. Commissioners are real weary about doing speed bumps in neighborhoods because of the fact that apparently there's some court cases out there that make them liable for it, and somebody hits a speed bump and something happens, they say they want to stay away from it, so they don't do it. So let's see, what else? I didn't bring my glasses in, so
Did you want me to read it, sir?
I think I can see that.
I tried to make it bigger.
Drug use, let's go to the number 6 on the drug use in the communities. So in the past, we had collaboration of sorts between Richmond Hill Police Department and the Pembroke Police Department and the Bryan County Sheriff's Office. Each one of those entities had one or two people involved in what they called an in-county drug unit. And so we had a lot of equipment that we could use to do undercover buys and to do all these drug-related undercover, gosh, for a better word I'm looking for, but undercover situations, going in and buying drugs from people in the area. So over the years, the Sheriff's Office partnered with Chatham County narcotics team and put an individual in the Georgia Bureau of Investigation Tri-Circuit Drug Task Force. And so that's where we are now. We have a person that's soon to be reassigned. I had one person that wanted to come out of that. When I took over, he'd been doing it for so many years, he was kind of burned out on it. He wanted to come out of that. So we don't have a person right now, per se, in the GBI task force, but this other person that we have hired is going through the process. He has to be vetted, has to go through all those things and pass polygraphs and all those things to go back in. So we are putting that person back in to GBI Drug Task Force. I don't know that we're going to put a person back into the Chatham narcotics part of it. What I wanted to do, and it kind of fell through, was I wanted to have 2 people from the Bryan County Sheriff's Office and 1 from the Pembroke Police Department and 1 from Richmond Hill to come back together so that we could concentrate on the drugs that are in our areas. So it fell through with Pembroke on that side of it for now. So we're going to revisit it. I do have 2 people. One of who I just mentioned was going to go to GBI Drug Task Force that I have hired to be on that task force if we decide or when we decide to create one for Bryan County. I think that would be to our advantage because right now the GBI task force has to cover so much. Everybody's shorthanded. Their offices in Metter, but they're covering so many areas that they don't get to focus primarily on our areas, which are Richmond Hill and Ellaville and Pembroke and whatnot. So that is something that I'm working towards. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some money. All of the equipment that we pulled out recently that I used in 2009, still in there. It's all outdated. Probably doesn't even work anymore. But I have a pile of equipment in my office that's undercover drug-related equipment that's no good. So all that's going to have to be replaced. We're going to have to come up with the funding and the ways to do it. But saying that, we still are doing what we can to combat the drug-related issues in Bryan County, and we're trying to do that through traffic enforcement. What we will do is we'll identify areas that we have issues in, and we'll send our traffic enforcement guys in those areas. So whenever the user comes in to buy the drugs, we can pick off the user We might be able to make a traffic stop on somebody that has just come through an area that has a traffic-related offense. We stop that person. We're able to identify them. We might get some drugs off of them, and then they may turn over and say, okay, well, in order to help myself, I'm going to tell you who I got it from, where they live, and all this information goes into our resources so that we can get those resources from the GBI maybe and come in and say, we need to target this place because this is the information that we got. We just purchased our second drug dog, so now we have 3. We had one, when I came in office in January, we had one, and it was assigned to GBI, so it wasn't even used in our area. So I pulled it back. It's here now. It's in the area. It's being utilized. They have made several cases already in the last year with that dog since it's been put back on the street. Tripp, who is back here in the back, he has our second dog. He just went through all the process to have it certified. He and the dog certified together through the state of Georgia. It's on the street now with our traffic unit. And then Jonathan Lewis is in Florida now, and he'll be back here probably at the end of the week or the end of next week with his dog, and that dog will go through the certification process at Chatham County Sheriff's Office, and when they're finished, it'll be on the street. So we'll have 3 drug dogs that we can utilize in those situations where we might make a traffic stop and have to use that dog to find narcotics. So those are some things that are definitely going on. I know people hate being stopped and hate traffic tickets, but it's a must in an area if you're looking to get down the numbers or bring down the numbers of crashes in your area. Traffic enforcement is a necessary evil. Same thing with drug-related issues. If you have an area that you know that people are visiting to buy drugs, if you cut off those people that are buying it, then you hurt the person who's trying to sell it until you can get enough information to be able to go in and take that person down that's selling it. Are we going to get rid of it? No, we're not going to get rid of it. President Reagan talked about it in the 80s, the war on drugs. We're going to win the war on drugs. We're not going to win the war on drugs. As long as there's the money involved in the drug industry, we're not going to win a war on drugs. Can we educate people on drugs and how to go about staying away from them or dealing with it? Yeah, I think that's where we need to be, is education on how to stay away from it. And then some of this stuff we'll talk about in a few minutes about it's not necessarily the teenagers. That's who we worry about, the teenagers and drugs. It's not necessarily the teenagers that we're having to worry about. It's some of the other folks. Let's see. We talked about the training. So when I came in January, I pulled David Hicks out of, he was in the school as a resource. He was in school as a CHAMPS instructor, I'm sorry. I pulled him out because he likes to do training, and so I made him our training officer. And so what he did and what he's done is he's gone in and he's gone through everybody's profile, because they have to be certified through certain things through the state of Georgia. He's gone through all those profiles and tried to gear those people, or steer those people rather, in the direction that they need to go because of their job assignment. And was saying that also, we purchased a software program. It's called Power DMS. And what Power DMS allows us to do, it allows David to go in and create a training course, an online training course for those people, because as she mentioned earlier, we're cut in two by the military base. We have to do things in duplicate. We have to do everything that we do on the north end on the south end, or everything we do on the south end on the north end. And it's very difficult to get people who are scheduled to work here to be up there on the north end for training when they have to come back here and work that night, or vice versa. So what we tried to do through Power DMS is he can go on and he can create this training program and keep up with all of our training records on this particular site. The guys can go on that site, they sign into it, they take the course that he's created, They get their certification hour, they take the test, get the hours, and it goes into their profile as that they have taken this course and received those hours. So we're able to put those courses on there that we want and mandate it. I can say, all right, so what we want to do is we want to put Narcan training on there, how to administer Narcan, make everybody go to it. And it'll alert us and say, hey, this person hadn't done it yet. Get on the phone and say, why haven't you taken this course? And get them, able to get them over there and get them signed in and get the course taken. But what it does for us is it gives us that opportunity to tell our officers, hey, these are the things that are important. These courses are what we want you to take. We've put them on our system. We've signed you up for it. Go in and take these courses and follow the recommendations that we have as far as the command staff, where we want to see you in your training. So we have been able to, over the course of last year, through Chatham County Narcotics Commander is a good friend of mine, Mike Sarhat, and through a grant that Jennifer was able to get, we have been able to get all of our officers Narcan. So coming in January, a lot of people, especially Miss Fuller, she was with United Way one time, but I can't think of what she's with now. She might be with United Way now. She was with the Drug Coalition, I think, one time. They all thought that we had Narcan. They had been told, I guess, that the Bryan County Sheriff's officers, deputies, all had Narcan. Well, we didn't, but we just got it. So we do have it now. And so what we hope to be able to do is, in those instances where we need to be there, and we're normally there first anyway, when we get a call, somebody's down, it looks like it's drug related, we get there first most of the time. Now we have Narcan, and all of our vehicles have Narcan in them. They know how to administer it because they've all been through the Narcan course, and so hopefully we'll be able to save a few folks like that too as well. I don't know what else it was. There was something else that was on my mind. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay.
They were asking about what camps and the panhandling, but I know that's a different subject.
Okay. I have a few questions that were presented, and I'll be glad to answer them. If there's anything else that I missed that I might need to go over that you guys can see, or
No, I think we did.
And I will say, we will continue to partner with Georgia Southern University, and we very much appreciate their help and everything that they've done, because they help us bridge gaps and get information that sometimes is not so easily available. So we're going to continue to part with them, because their work has spoken for itself outstandingly, and their communication has been amazing, even through multiple group emails sometimes, but that's just kind of the way it is. Is there any questions at this time for the GSU side for the survey?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. Is that possible? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm one of the ones that didn't get a survey. I don't know, for whatever reason. So this is the first I'm seeing it. But I can tell you by some of other surveys that I've done, I don't know, did you start asking people maybe age, maybe have you had an interaction with, a sheriff's officer? I don't get stopped by the sheriff's department. So a lot of questions, if I was to take this survey based on that in and of itself, I would lean towards number 3, the middle of the aisle. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't know if they did a good job, didn't do a good job, if they are biased and unbiased or whatever. Just about for any of these questions, I would go middle of the line. Because unless I knew somebody that had an interaction, and then with that, it would all be not speculation, but it would all be based on hearsay. You know what I mean? Like, oh, my friend said, oh, they treated her unfairly, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, now I'm getting one side of the story, so I can answer a question and be like, well, no, they're unfair, you know, that sort of thing. So sometimes the results are not a clear indication, but if you knew I did get stopped by a police officer, haven't had an interaction with a police officer, you know, that sort of thing, that would kind of just kick me almost out of the survey. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so we definitely did take that into consideration, and so if you look in the appendices of that survey, it gives you more information about the people who completed that survey. And so we did ask about other demographic characteristics such as age, such as employment, if they were a law enforcement member, past, present, as well as if they lived in or inside or outside of city limits, if they had contacted Bryan County Sheriff's Office for any reason, as well as if they had been stopped by Bryan County Sheriff's Office. And generally speaking, what we find is that when we're looking across the country, only roughly 10 to 12% of individuals across the country are ever stopped by any law enforcement across the country each year. Very, very, very few people, which admittedly we're seeing that as well. We see that 5.13% of people had been stopped by Bryan County Sheriff's Office. So it definitely reflects what you're saying, is that not a lot of people have been stopped. However, having said that, you talked about the anecdotal experiences and talking about these kind of word of mouth situations. The thing is that those are just as important, because if, for example, I was to tell Dr. Summers that I didn't like somebody, how he's going to respond based on that information is very important. He may not call them, talk to them, and respond in a way that we might need him to, simply because he's heard bad news from me about somebody else. So those indirect experiences are very, very important, especially when we have indirect experiences that are negative. From the research we know is that negative experiences weigh much, much more on the minds of community members than do positive experiences. After all, think for yourselves. You know, when you go out and about your daily lives, think about, you know, when you have good things going on. Yeah, you might share something, you know, with somebody and be like, oh, things are going great. But the moment something goes terrible and it makes you have many negative emotions, you're much more likely to remember it, recall it, and share it. Not just on social media, but with other people around you. So.
But sometimes that can go into your mindset. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
I got my hand caught in the cookie jar.
Yep.
Well, now I'm going to lash out because even though I was wrong, I'm going to lash out because, you know, you caught me doing something. You know what I'm saying? You know,
Absolutely. And that's where the research points to the use of procedural justice. What happens is that when people are treated fairly, with dignity and respect, given an opportunity to explain their side of the situation, what we know from research then is, regardless of the outcome, regardless if you get a ticket or if you don't get a ticket, you get a warning, people are still going to be satisfied as long as the process that took to get to that outcome was fair. So we should see positive things reflected in these surveys, regardless of whether somebody gets a ticket or not, assuming that procedural justice is being used. And we do find evidence that the community finds sheriff's deputies to be acting in fairly procedurally just manners. So I feel confident about it, but I definitely agree that that is something that we do want to make sure we're attending to. Absolutely.
Is there any other questions for the GSU side? Okay. Is there questions for the sheriff? Okay. If you just want to come up, please, because it's easier to get you a mic and be able to hear you. Yeah. Whoever wants to come up.
The only quick question I have is, you mentioned that you're in the process of hiring more deputies.
Yes.
How many people do we have currently on staff for everything? How many are you looking to fill? And with everything going on in the north end with the mega site and all the activity that's going to be going there, what's the process going to be to get more people up and running for long-term goals?
Okay, so that's a good question. I actually asked this question or was talking about this with some of the commissioners not long ago, and so you find a lot of times that when a new subdivision is coming in, and it's going to be several hundred or 1,000 homes, that who gets included in that a lot of times is water and sewer, and the people who are building it, of course, the commissioner's office, the fire department a lot of time gets included in it, but the sheriff's office and law enforcement gets left out of that. What they don't realize, and what I tried to explain to them, is anytime you know there's going to be a new subdivision coming in or more people are going to be added, we need to look at what it's going to take to add the additional officers to take care of that particular subdivision or that particular housing market. So we talked about that, and coming out of last year, from January 1st of 2021 to December the 31st of 2021, we hired 18 people. We were down 18 people across the board, and that's including patrol, traffic, dispatch, and detention. So we are up to full staff right now across everything that we have. We have 88 people, I will say, somewhere in that area, 88 employees. We added an additional 12 this year. They gave us an additional 12, which put 2 more dispatchers in our dispatch center. It put 4 transport officers in our detention center. It put 2 more people on traffic, and it put 6 more people on patrol. Those vehicles we're still waiting on those to come in. As soon as they do, we'll be able to hire 6 the first half of the year and 6 the next half of the year. So there's additional 12 across the board. And so that puts us up to, what's that, 100, is that right? So it puts us up to 100 people across the board. Now, is that enough? No. The national average per 1,000 residents is it's like 2.3 or 2.4 officers per 1,000 people in the community. So we're still down, but you have to take into account on that also that Richmond Hill has a portion of that, and Pembroke Police Department has a portion of that. But even with that, we're still down. So we're going to have to figure out a way to continue to do this year by year when the budget cycle comes around. How do we need to go about adding more people to our department so that we can cover those areas? And what we're not even thinking about are the thousands and thousands and thousands of cars that come up and down 95 that we have to handle as well. 95 and I-16. They don't live here. But if something happens out there, we have to deal with it. So that's one thing that we're definitely working on that. We're coming to, so hopefully the next budget cycle they'll give us a few more. We'll continue to work that out until we get to the number that we need to be able to sufficiently handle the call volume that we have, on both ends of the county. Anything else? I had a question on here about the homeless camps. We are aware of some of the homeless camps coming here. Mostly, I think around the Love's truck stop, there were some areas there, and around some of the interchanges in the city, there were some areas there that they have identified where homeless people are camping out. If it's a private property, there's not much that we can do. It has to come from that particular landowner and say, hey, we don't want these folks on our property. Let's get them out. We'll be glad to go in and help them get them out. But they're going to go somewhere else. They're going to go somewhere else that they can hide for a few minutes until someone finds them. Now, if they allow them to stay there, there's not a thing in the world anyone can do about it. For a long time, they allowed them to stay down Highway 204 at 95, kind of behind the ride share. They allowed that, and it became a problem, and then they pushed them out from there, and then they kind of dispersed, and they went here and there, and some of them are here. Saying that, when you see those folks out at the interchanges with their sign and they're asking for money, there's absolutely nothing that law enforcement can do about that. The Supreme Court has ruled that sign and them panhandling for money is their constitutional right of free speech. And so even though, as long as they don't aggravate people or create a disturbance that causes any other issues, if they're just out there holding a sign asking for money and you hand them money, there's nothing we can do about it. And they're going to be out there as long as that's in effect. Now in Florida, and I think that's what they should do here, in Florida, they have to go and purchase a panhandling license to be able to do that. So I don't know if that's something they would want to do here in the state of Georgia. That's beyond me. But I just know we can't enforce running them out of the intersections over there unless they're creating an issue. So that's one of the things with the homeless. When we talked about, the other question on here was about fentanyl and some of the overdoses. Fentanyl has become an issue. I did a class about 10 years ago for the local phone company in Pembroke, who, through their insurance, long story short, if they do training, they can get a break on their insurance when their employees are trained through that. So I said then fentanyl was going to be an issue, and it's come to fruition. It is an issue. It continues to be an issue, but on the flip side of that, the opioid pandemic is just as bad as the fentanyl. What we have found over the course of time is that they're cutting fentanyl into some of these other drugs, into cocaine and cooking it into crack. And so it does, it's a filler, as well as it adds an additional part to their euphoria that they get. And what they don't understand is when they get too much and they fall asleep, they don't wake up. So that's where the Narcan comes in for us. It's as important or more important to me that our guys are protected by that, because if they come in contact with a person who is overdosed and they get it on them, now they're in trouble. So we have enough Narcan, I hope, in our vehicles to be able to take care of the person that they're working on and them if they need to be administered Narcan to as well. So.
I do have a question that came from online. I didn't know if you want the answer, if you wanted me to answer it, sir. Ms. Gina said, are the officers trained in handling a special needs person? I can say on the training end, getting up with the sergeant, we are going to be partnering with some mental health clinicians, and for them to come in and be doing some training with the deputies on how to help in situations that special needs individuals, because obviously treatment is going to be a little bit different depending on the mental health status of that individual. So we are advancing on what our training is as far as handling a special needs person. I will say probably at this time it's probably minimal because of all the advancements within the mental health community, and when it comes to diagnoses, medications, treatments, that's forever changing. Studies are coming out roughly quarterly that are available, that are being looked at in red, and so there is communication between some of those researchers and what their research results are and how that affects special needs and law enforcement, and we will be partnering with them to come in and provide those training for our deputies, and I hope that answers her question.
In addition to that, the state has, over the last few years, they have mandated certain courses that officers, law enforcement officers, have to take every year that cover mentally ill, dealing with the mentally ill, and people with Tourette's and some of the Asperger's and some of those other mental illnesses. So they have the state has, over the years, like I said, has identified that law enforcement needs to be trained on that as well. So. Anything?
That's the only question that we've had.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
And where do you see more drugs prominent in the area? You know, is it more south, more in one area than the other area, or
so
could you see it pretty much around the whole? You know what I'm?
Well, I'm gonna. It's all according to what drug you're referencing. So opioids are more of a high end. So you're gonna find those in more white people. You're gonna find crack cocaine in more of the black communities. You're gonna find cocaine in general across the board. But if you look at some of these surveys, you'll be able to see opioids, especially, that it's more of a white drug, and it's 25 to 44 is the range of the folks that are dying from the opioids and the fentanyl. And so we had issues back in 2008, 2009 when I was the drug agent here for Bryan County. there was a lot of opioid drug-related issues in the Richmond Hill area. Nobody wanted to know about it. Nobody wanted to admit it. Nobody wanted to deal with it. Everybody wanted to sweep it under the rug kind of thing. There were people here that were going down to Florida that were buying thousands and thousands of dollars worth of pills, opioids, and bringing them back here. We were able to cut some of those off and arrest several of them and put a lot of them in jail. But it was because there was so much money involved in it. And like I said, it was just kind of wanted to be swept under the rug. For years after that, it started coming to the surface, and that's why I think the opioid prevention program for Bryan County came into effect. They began to see it. It started coming to the surface. People were dying. People were getting sick and having to go to the hospital, to the ER. All that information started coming about, and so started dealing with it a little bit more on that level. But predominantly, when you talk about selling drugs, you're talking about someone buying marijuana, cocaine, and crack. That's usually the drug dealer that most everybody says, oh, that's a drug dealer. That's what they're dealing in most of the time. But there are a lot of them that you don't see that are dealing in prescription drugs. And those people are normally the ones that have a prescription from a doctor that gives them a 90-day supply or 3 months, 4 or 6 month supply, and they take a portion of that and use for themselves, and they sell the rest. So there's so much money involved in it. 40 milligram tablets, $40. If you get it under, these folks get it under their insurance program, it didn't cost them a dime. They get it from Medicare or Medicaid, didn't cost them a dime. They turned a 90-pill bottle into, thousands of dollars. So it's unreal how much people can make off of it. And some people supplement their income that way. It's just being able to pin those people down. It's really hard on the prescription side to figure out where that's coming from. A lot of times, sometimes we're able to go through the DEA who handles some of the pharmaceutical parts and find those doctors who are pill mill doctors, what they call pill mill doctors you can go to and get whatever you want and shut them down, and it helps in the area. But anyway, sorry, I ramble sometimes.
Ms. Vanessa had a multi-part, so I'll outline it. If somebody's making constant complaints about noise ordinance, and it is a continuous issue and they're not finding resolution, what can be a resolution for them? Because it appears that she's been calling continuously. It looks like they go out, but it's not solving the issue in itself. What is a resolution she can reach, or what does she need to do to fix that?
So I don't know if she lives in the city limits. If it's a city limit issue, as far as city ordinance would cover noise complaints within a city municipality. It's outside of the city limits, of course, that would be the county. The county has a policy that would cover noise complaints as well. The thing I think I would do is continue to make a report, or call and make a report on it, and contact the county commissioner's office. Has now, I think, just in the last few months, put in a code enforcement person to enforce their codes. And gosh, I can't think of what the lady's name is that handles it, but maybe call the code enforcement folks over at the commissioner's office and find out what the ordinance really is, because over the years with ordinances, the sheriff's office predominantly has not enforced county ordinances or had a place to take them if we were to issue a citation for ordinances. So now I think the commissioner's office has implemented the officers to be able to go out and enforce those codes and those ordinances and take those cases to the magistrate judge, and she's willing to hear them. So the magistrate's office could be could be a revenue or an avenue rather for information for her.
And also, what is the best way to address or request additional patrol in specific neighborhoods?
Just contact our office, and we'll put her in touch with one of the captains, either the major or one of the captains over patrol, and try to get some extra patrol in the neighborhood for her.
Okay. I'm just double checking. You're good. We're current, and there's nothing further at this time.
All right.
Okay. Well, then
Anything else? Good.
Actually, yeah, I just want to make maybe just one comment, thinking about some of the issues that have been raised in the Q&A, talking about homeless populations, folks that might have special needs, the drug problem. These are all kind of interlocking issues, and it's also important to keep in mind that this is a problem from a community level, and we ask, I think, police officers to wear lots of different hats, and that can be sometimes not great for community relationships between police and their community. And so I think in as much as some of those issues, if we can think about the root issue instead of using the police to, exile people from homeless camps, maybe identifying how we can better route services and resources that will, I think, for everybody, lead to a better resolution. I would encourage be the predominant way that the community sees their relationship with law enforcement as not necessarily needing to solve all of the problems, right? We're a community together. And so that's what I would say about that.
I just wanted to say, the last thing I wanted to say is one of the reasons that we asked for this survey, and that we asked these good, kind folks next to me, and I asked Jennifer to kind of put this together, is that I don't know everything. I'll never tell you that I do, and I am in a learning process. I've been that way for years and years and years and years, and will continue to be that way. Someone once told me that if you don't learn something today, then you miss an opportunity to learn. So I want to put this out there because I'm new to this position. I'm not new to law enforcement, but I'm not up to speed on everything. And so I try to put people around me that are good at their jobs and that will primarily lead the way I want them to lead, and the example that I show them, and how to go about their job. And one of the things that I mentioned to them, some of you may or may not know that the broken windows theory, but I came up with what they call the open windows theory, and I tell these guys, go through the neighborhoods and roll your windows down. Roll your windows down so that you don't have that barrier, that you can talk to people, so that when you see someone in the yard, you can say, hey, hold your hand out the window and just wave. Even, hey, how you doing? Good to see you, whatnot. That breaks a lot of those things down, and this is just another way that we can understand what you want from us, and then we can turn around and give you what you ask for if we can. So just saying that, I appreciate everybody. Yes?
I have another question. This is about, and I know it's about bullying, and I know the school system has its part to do, and I know if some of the bullying that's going on, and parents have spoken to the school, and the school, that some kids been threatening that they are going to kill them. I have a friend of mine that her child is going through that, but that happened in Midway. Now he came here in Richmond Hill, and they started bothering him here. My daughter has some of that as well, for being Hispanic. Me once before as well. They're Puerto Ricans, I'm Puerto Rican. The mother doesn't know what to do anymore. She feels that the system within the school has failed. The child goes and speaks. The teacher's hand, even from my child, says, no, Mom, you know what? She just turned 16. Teachers' hands are tied. There's no policy. how are they protecting us? And as me as a mother, that I haven't gone through what my friend that we've been traveling through the military, we met back in Hawaii many years ago, and her kids are the same age, and I'm saying, and I hear that, and that just kills me. To hear her that her son, in Midway, they told him, I want to kill you, and this was relentless. 5 kids every day, every day, every day, every day, after the job, after the job, after the job. Goes to the mom. The kid doesn't want to, Mom, I shouldn't say anything because, if I say something, you go somewhere, they say it, they're going to come back to them, and, and then I'm going to get it worse. Which eventually that's what happened to the job. Now he's here in the school system. And I spoke to her, I said, you need to speak. And I spoke to him directly. I said, baby, because he feels it already that not the teacher, not even the counselor, not even the principal, he doesn't trust them. And he's been here a couple of months. He can't even sit to eat lunch that they come and bother him. I'm like, are we blind? Are we blind? Because I'm a preschool teacher, and they're not old enough yet. You see little things, between them when they're little. One is hitting the other one because they want this. You teach them, you say, no, baby, you don't do this. You teach them from young. And I've told my children from young, and I've always told my children, nobody comes and mess with my children and my kids' education. Because I also had issues in the past in Tennessee. That they were not giving even a major, what was it? One of the social study English or one of these. The teacher said outright, even in a note to the parents, so I'm not giving this till next year. And I know I'm bringing some stuff from other places, but, and I've heard it from my children that, some have been bullied, my younger one and my middle child one, and hearing from this, and this is not the only person, there's been other people. And, and it takes a community, because I remember when I was small, my mother used to say, she does something wrong, you smack them. That old school, you see a child breaking property, my mother would have said, your child is doing this. Nowadays, and I've been in one of these stores, the kid went running around, hitting everything, hit a lady, and the mother blamed the lady for whatever the child was doing. And I know it's everybody, because it's a community, like we say, a community brings a child, because you don't see your child. And I've spoken to the public system here, I said, you know what, I taught my child to do right. What he does once he passes that threshold, I can't say. No one can say. Because sometimes as much as you teach your child, sometimes they hang on with the wrong person, the wrong child. You try to do. But then I had this person that just came in and it breaks my heart. And she doesn't know where to go, the mother. She goes, if I do this, they're going to be attacking him more. If I don't do it, they're still attacking him. They're still not attacking, they're still verbally right now. And when is the time that you say enough is enough? You didn't protect my child in the classroom, because you could hear the child. He videotaped it. You could see children throwing stuff, and this wasn't Midway now. Throwing stuff at him. A kid threw a pencil and hit him right here. He showed me they took pictures of the parents, took pictures of him. If it would have gone an inch more, that kid would have been deaf. He defended himself with a pencil, and he got suspended. So then when I tell my children, like my parents used to tell me, don't throw the first punch, but if they punch you, defend yourself. Because then where is it going to stop? Where they're going to several people. And I told my children that. I said, don't never throw the first punch, but you need to defend yourself. If nobody in the school system is defending your child, and I'm a teacher, not a public teacher, I teach in private, and I see something with my little ones, and you don't attack it since they're small, you see that behavior, and it takes a community. The parents have to say something to them, the teacher that sees it has to say that, the teacher has to speak to the parent, and then the teacher, the parent speaks, would like to speak to the other parent, oh, we can't do that in the system. So where is, I told them, go to the police. I don't know what else to tell them.
Absolutely.
That is a problem in our school system, Bryan County too. That's a huge problem. There's a communication between parents, school, and Board of Education. So when do we, because there's not, I read the law in the state, I read the policies in the Board of Education. There's not clear steps. The Board of Education, it goes up to the board. The board is in charge of the schools. So what can we do then? Can we get involved the cops in situations like that in our own schools?
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
the board is not doing anything about protecting our kids, and that's a big issue.
So whether it happens inside a school or right here in this building, it's an assault. If some other child is hitting or doing, making physical contact with your child, there are some bullying laws out there. What we're trying to do, and because we're playing catch up from years past, trying to get to the numbers that we talked about a minute ago, to where we really need our department to be in growth-wise. I've talked a couple of times. I haven't really sat down and put the nails in the coffin, so to speak, but we would like to have a resource officer, school resource officer, in every school in Bryan County eventually. Now that's going to take some time and it's going to take some money. The school board has assured me that they have some funds that are available to help with that, so we would like to do that. But you can still reach out to if you're not getting any satisfaction from your principal, your teacher first, your principal, your school board member in your area, or your superintendent, reach out to us, and we will gladly see if you have enough information or enough problems for a case to be started, and we'll be able to do a juvenile complaint form and bring them before our juvenile justice system. The other part of that is we are trying to get back into school this year so that we can restart our CHAMPS program. We'll have one instructor this year, and then eventually start adding instructors so that we can get into that, back into those schools to do that CHAMPS program. And what that does also is it helps educate the children to make better choices, and bullying is a part of that, to make better choices, why you shouldn't bully, and to make better choices on other things. But that is one of the things that will happen second half, I think, if I'm not mistaken, of the school year, because we weren't able to get into our curriculum. We were not able to get into the curriculum in time to add it to the first part, so we'll get into the second part of the school system and have classes in the north end and in the south end here as far as CHAMPS go. But the bullying it's always been an issue. Children are cruel, and a lot of times I hear it's on the female side of it where most of the cruelty is. The girls are picking on other girls and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't matter who it is. We will gladly help to rectify the situation if you bring it to our attention.
Because the child is already feeling it. He's already anxious. And it's going to turn into something that he's physically not going to be able to handle. His stomach is churning.
Well, and you know where that heads a lot of times. And that's not a road that we want that child to go down.
Right.
So,
It's something that we have been, my husband and I, and the group have been working to change the Board of Education, but if we don't have the support of the parents, they complain a lot online, but if we don't have the support, we can't change it.
Right.
We should, because the teachers can't, this is what I have heard from the principal at the high school in Richmond Hill, and teachers, they can't contact the parents. The board doesn't let them contact the bullying parents to let them know this is the problem with your child, this is what your child is doing in school, you can do something about it. You can't contact them. I had a situation where my daughter was sexually assaulted, and they took care of my problem quick because I moved quick. I even contact lawyers attorneys. I'm not, because I won't deal with that. And so the principal did suspend the kid. They did the investigation right away. They suspended the child, but they came and contacted the parent after the fact, and the parent had no idea her kid was behaving the way she was in the classroom. I mean, her behavior was out of control, and the teacher wasn't controlling it. So if we're having problems with teenagers too, it all comes down also to the Board of Education here. I'm from Connecticut. We're way advanced, 30 years, 35 years advanced in the state and the system. So when I see this, it's like, what is happening here? You know, so I think somehow we have to reach out to the board and be like, listen, your policy needs to be more clear, because they're not. The teachers need more training, have more communication in our school system, so they could be able to contact the parents and deal with this disrespect that is going on in our school, because from there, it comes out here, and I've seen it.
Right.
And it has stopped teenagers from committing federal crime myself. And be like, if you don't go back, like I had one kid, he was opening everybody's mailbox and messing with mail. And I noticed that, but I opened my blind, waited for the kid to come back to see who it was, went outside and told him out. And I'm like, if you do not go back and fix all those mailboxes, because it is a federal crime, I will call the cops and follow you home. And then we're going to talk to your parents about this issue. So they start in there, and it comes out here. And there's been a lot of residents who have felt it, and older people where teenagers are disrespecting them. You know, so I think it also has to do with the board, because you guys could do your job, but if that system is broken in there too, and it's not fixed, you guys are going to keep having issues. So that's another thing that needs to be fixed.
I agree. So a lot of times we find that we don't get the information right away, or that we're hearing about it later. Something happened and we didn't know about it. So if you know it, whether it be drug related like we've already talked about, or any other crime that's happening in your area, and you do this because you don't want to get involved, then you're doing an injustice to us and your neighbors in your neighborhood and your community, because we need to know that information, because we may already be on to that person, so to speak, but we just don't know what they're doing, or we need a little bit more information to continue to go further. And if that information lies in you, and you're not letting us know the things that we feel like you should divulge to us, then there's not a lot of things that we can do when we don't know about it. But we'd gladly will help.
Because I spoke to her today, I was a while on the phone with her. She's my godson's godmother, his godmother. And I told her, well, I'm going to go tonight. I'm going to ask some questions, because, you know, I feel bad for her.
So most of that, what you're talking about, is on the law enforcement side of things. So there's the fine line. I understand there's a fine line between education and disruption, and then getting on the law enforcement side of things where criminal acts can occur. But when you get over that line towards the law enforcement side or the criminal side, that's not what the Board of Education is designed for. So if you're not satisfied, in other words, with some of the things that they have done, and you feel like it needs to go further, contact our office. We'll be glad to send an investigator out to speak with you, speak with the child, and see what is going on. And if there's anything that we can do on the side of that, we will gladly, like I just mentioned, do a juvenile complaint form and turn it into the juvenile justice system, and let the juvenile folks do their investigation and see if it needs to proceed further up the chain to the court. And we have a great juvenile court judge that's right here in Richmond Hill, and she doesn't mess around. And if she sees that it needs to come before her, she'll make that happen. And maybe even if they don't have to go to juvenile jail, so to speak, just come before her and she says, this is what you're going to do for me, because you're in front of me. You're going to do this, 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 and this, and if you don't, I'm going to hold your parent responsible for it. A lot of times that stops it right there.
That's the same way I was telling her, if, like in her situation, if she wouldn't have spoke about, because I was born in Chicago, grew up in New York, and if you don't say police, and you don't say lawyers, I guess they think you're gonna sit back. And that's my experience. So I told her, I said, no, they don't play with my kids. You ain't going there. I told the kid, and I feel so bad, I told the kid, maintain a journal. Maintain a journal of everything that's happening to you, the date, the time, the teacher, who you spoke to, the counselor you spoke to, the student that did whatever is that. I said, because the day that you need something, you're not gonna remember all those details. What they did to you. Because what can you do as a parent, you know? And like we say, like you said, you know, it's if you don't know it, you know, and a lot of parents are afraid to do it. He's already afraid to speak. He doesn't want the parents to talk.
I understand that. A lot of times all it takes is for you guys to notify us, for one of our officers to go out to the perpetrator, the person that's doing all this, and saying, hey, look, this has been brought to our attention that this is happening. Your son is creating this situation at school, and a lot of times that is all it takes. Mom and Daddy didn't know it, like you said. They handle it, and it goes away.
Yeah, because there's another thing is that we don't want to put these kids, if it could be handled and they could be, reprimanded now, they could go to college. They're not going to have a file on them. You know, it's not like we're choosing to say, well, you know, I want to because I'm going to put you here. No, we're parents also, we understand. Sometimes the parents don't know about it. But if they could be able to speak to the parent or do, you know, and okay, wait, that's what it takes, okay, then that helps a lot.
And it happens a lot. I'll just say one more thing. It happens a lot in communities where people don't know one another. You live in a small community where everyone knows everybody else. They know that child. They know who their parent is. You would be more apt to say, hey, so-and-so, your son is doing this at school. I just wanted to let you know that. Well, if you don't know that parent, you don't know what their response is going to be. You're not going to call them. And we would never tell you, and the Board of Education would probably never tell you to get in touch with a parent over any situation with a child that you don't really know or have a good relationship with, because it could go south really quick. And so we would rather you come to us if they can't deal with it on their side, so to speak, and it's beyond their control. Come to us, let us handle it for you, and we'll do what we can to help you. Yep, absolutely.
I have a question for you, Mark. What are the requirements a person has to be hired by your department?
So,
what is the training after they get hired?
After you get hired?
What are the requirements for a person to get hired by your department? And after they're hired, what is the training?
Okay, so the state mandates everything that they have to do prior to coming to work for us. So what we do now is we hire people that are what they call pre-service. They've already gone through the academy. They've already been vetted by the state as not having any criminal, acts, any bad things on their record, so to speak. They go through the academy. They graduated. They have their certificate. They have what they call their PBLE number, which is their basic police officer's identification number. Then they come to us and say, I have all these things, can I get a job? So when they come to us, most of the time they already have everything that they need as far as radar certification and taser and the driving courses, the high-speed driving courses and things like that. But if they don't have those things, we put them through our taser course. We put them through our FTO program, which is our Field Training Officer program. I think now it's 8 or 10 weeks, maybe 12 weeks. We just kind of went through it, but I can't remember the time frame. So what we do now is we have each officer go through the certain steps. They go into the detention center for a period of time. They go into the dispatch office for a period of time. They go in the investigator's office. They go through patrol, traffic, leave out anything. I think that's all of them. But they go through those steps, and then they have to be evaluated on the certain parts that are in our FTO program, how they deal with the public, how they write their reports, their driving skills, their investigation techniques, and all those things are evaluated. And then on the training side, like I said, to go through, if they hadn't been through the pit maneuver course where precision and mobilization technique, we send them to those courses. We send them to field training, field training officer course if they want to be a field training officer, field sobriety courses if they're interested in, most of them are interested in dealing with DUI subjects. So we go through some of those courses. Taser, firearms course, we make them requalify here. Even if they've qualified when they got out of the academy, they have to requalify here. They have to go through, there's three, I think one of them's cultural awareness, and then there's, try to remind me of the other courses.
It's community policing, de-escalation, and use of force training.
Okay, so they have to go through those courses as well after they get out of the academy and become hired by a department. But what we're trying to do, and I've gone through a lot of the courses with Gypstick, which is our training center in Forsyth, and tried to gear the training towards where their assignment is. So like on traffic, it's advanced traffic law and the precision and mobilization techniques that deal with driving, high-speed driving, some warrants and the Narcan courses, and then on the investigation side it gears towards the investigative parts, and the detention center is a different way, and dispatch, it goes towards dispatch. So there's a number of courses that we haven't sat down and put into place yet, but we are going to do that so that the overall picture is this: we don't want you to come here just for a job. We want you to come here for a career. We want you to come here and stay here for years and years and years and work yourself up to a position of a command staff person, or become the sheriff or whatnot. So most of our people have been here roughly 5 years is probably a good place. 5 to 10, 5 to 20. We have a good range from 5 years to 20. Most of them, if they stay 5, they'll continue to stay on until they get ready to retire. And so what I plan to do over the course of the next few terms is bring our new people into the detention center and give them the opportunity to go through the Bryan County Sheriff's Office to the academy to get their certification, to come back to work for the detention center for 2 years, and once they've done their 2 years in the detention center, they can be moved into another place. So they have to have worked for Bryan County for 3 years if they want to. We're trying to do some things to, scholarship-wise. If they worked for Bryan County for 3 years, we would be able to pay that for them. So now we're looking at 3 years that they've worked for us. We'll pay you to go to the school. You come back and work for us for the next 2 years in the detention center. Then you have 5 years. There's 5 years there. 5 years in already. We transfer you to another department, maybe traffic, maybe patrol. They have 5 years in, and we hope that they would continue to stay on for the next, 15 years maybe or something, until they get ready to retire. But that's some things that we have in the works as far as that goes. But, training is a big thing. It's a big thing. So I turned most of that over to David Hicks, who's our training officer. And I tell him these are the things that I want to see those guys do. He finds those courses, and he's able to kind of gear them in those directions according to their job assignments.
All right. We're good. So thank you all again for coming. If there's any questions, please reach out to us and let us know how we can help you all. So we hope you have a safe night.
Same here. Thank you.